3 empty chairs stood out in the middle of a row draped in white lace like ink stains on a perfect painting. I stood inside the bridal suite of Magnolia Estate, my veil almost touching the floor, checking my phone for the 15th time. No messages, no calls, not a single wish. And on social media, the latest photo from my brother, Vivian Cross. He was raising a glass of champagne beside the backdrop of the Charleston Business Awards Gala. Behind him, my mother smiled with flawless posture, her hand on my father's arm. The caption read, "So proud of our best son." Not a single line mentioning the daughter wearing a wedding dress today. Under the golden lights, the 3 of them looked cruelly happy. And here, in a room filled with jasmine and candlelight, Vivian Cross was about to walk down the aisle alone. Before I tell you what happened next, pause for a second. If you've ever been hurt by your own family on a day that was supposed to be your happiest, hit that like button not to support me, but to remind yourself that silence is sometimes the only way left to keep your dignity. And tell me, where are you watching from? Leave your city name in the comments below. I'll read every single one, because somewhere among those who are listening, there might be someone like me. Someone who once had to walk down the aisle with 3 empty chairs staring back at her like silent accusations. Now, let's go back to my wedding scene. As the music shifted, Martha gently opened the door. Light poured in, scattering across my gown like shards of broken glass. The scent of jasmine mixed with the river breeze, salty and soft. I took a deep breath that ached in my chest, inhaling the truth, exhaling the last trace of hope. Outside, the string quartet struck the first note. The whole garden held its breath. I stepped forward. Each heel tapping the stone path sounded like the ticking of a clock, marking every second of a lifetime waiting. Guests turned their heads. I caught glimpses of pity and smiles polite enough to mask discomfort. An old friend leaned toward someone and whispered 4 words I could lip read. "Poor thing. Alone." And then, from the end of the aisle, I saw a man in a black suit moving quickly along the veranda. My heart stopped for half a beat for a second. I thought it was my father. But no, just a waiter, carrying another tray of drinks. That flicker of hope, brief as it was, doubled the weight of my steps. That feeling so familiar I thought I'd grown immune, still scratched somewhere deep inside my chest. I kept my head straight, eyes fixed on the altar. There, Daniel stood waiting, holding the small bridal bouquet I'd forgotten that morning. Sunlight fell through the awning onto his shoulder, warm and steady, like the promise he once made. We'll build our own family. The 3 empty chairs in the front row were still there, their gold-embossed name cards catching the light, too bright to look at. Father, mother, family. 3 simple words heavier than any curse I'd ever heard. Martha stood at the aisle's edge, shaking her head gently before bowing quickly, so no one would see the sadness in her eyes. I smiled just enough for the camera to capture it, the kind of smile people might use later as proof of a strong bride. They didn't know that sometimes strength simply means keeping your hands still so they don't tremble. The river wind brushed past, carrying a faint note of the music. I heard the swish of my gown against the stone, and heard my heartbeat sinking with the melody. A child giggled somewhere among the guests, chasing a soap bubble that rolled to my feet and burst beside my heel, a tiny, pitiful sound. When the officiant began to speak, I glanced at Daniel. He looked at me, calm and wordless. His lips moved. "You're not alone." I nodded. That was enough. Every word of my vows scraped through my throat like a small blade, cutting away the last threads of expectation, of old wounds, leaving just enough space to breathe. When the words "I now pronounce you husband and wife" echoed, the guests clapped. Martha dabbed her eyes quickly, pretending to adjust her hair. The strings shifted key, and glass clinked. Somewhere, a man's voice murmured. Shame they couldn't make it. It wasn't aimed at anyone, but it pierced me all the same. When the ceremony ended, I stepped back under the colonnade. The late afternoon sun slid across the lawn, falling upon the 3 chairs that still stood there, 3 voids so full they could drown every memory. Daniel came closer and placed his hand on my back. "You did it," he said. I nodded, looking out toward the lake, where magnolia petals drifted like they were trying to hide something. Martha approached, her voice hésitant. "Vivian, there's something you should know." I turned. Her eyes flickered away. "This morning, Mrs. Evelyn called. She asked the organizers to cancel your family's seats. She said it would make the event look less awkward." The words dropped like a stone into still water. I said nothing, just looked at the 3 chairs one last time. The final ray of sunlight hit the card labeled "Mother of the Bride," turning it into a streak of cold silver. I whispered, "Good. Leave them empty, so they'll know I still got married without a single one of them here." I turned and walked away, the hem of my gown sweeping over the grass. Somewhere behind me, my phone buzzed softly inside my coat pocket. The name flashed on the screen, Vivian Cross calling. And in that moment, I knew my wedding was only the beginning of a war they would never again be able to control. I didn't answer. The phone screen lit up, then went dark again. Vivian Cross. That name pulsed like an old heartbeat I no longer wanted to measure. Laughter and the clinking of glasses echoed faintly from afar. Martha stepped closer, about to say something, but I just shook my head. "Everything's fine." I lied, but lying was something I'd been trained for all my life. The last time my mother called me was 5 years ago, before this wedding, before Artemis Media was born, before I learned that some relationships need to be buried while the people in them are still alive. Back then, I was 28, having just left an advertising firm in New York to return to Charleston. My parents called it a step backward. "Lucas just got nominated for Young Entrepreneur of the Year," my mother said over the phone. "I got an award too." "Mom, the International Creative Idea Award." Silence. Then the soft click of her manicured nails tapping a wooden desk. "Good. As long as you know when to stop dreaming. Talent doesn't pay bills." Vivian. I remember laughing not because it was funny, but because I realized that every time I tried to prove myself, they only covered their ears tighter. When I was little, the Cross household was a castle, where every room had its own rule. The library lights could only be on when Father read the paper. At the dining table, conversations were allowed only if they were about Lucas. And I, the daughter who loved to draw, was allowed to sit at the corner, just far enough not to stain the white tablecloth with ink. I still remember the first time my painting was chosen for the school exhibition. I brought it home, waiting for Mom to return from work so I could show her. She walked in, coat slung over her shoulder, and asked, "What's all this mess again?" "No." "Mom." "Look," Miss Hart said. She didn't let me finish. "Don't call your teacher like she's your friend." She pulled the drawing out of the frame, glanced at it once, and placed it on the table. Her tone was perfectly flat. "It's pretty, but your father won't hang it in the living room. The paint on those walls is expensive, and light ruins color faster than you think." I folded the frame, hearing the glass clink softly like a bone cracking. My father, as always, simply said, "Lucas has a debate competition soon. You should cheer for him." I nodded. Over time, I developed a strange survival skill, learning how to make myself smaller just to keep the house quiet. But Miss Hartme, art teacher that year, refused to let me disappear. She had gray-streaked hair and smelled faintly of sandalwood perfume. One afternoon, as class ended, she pulled me aside. "You know, Vivian," she said softly, "one day they'll have to buy tickets just to watch you paint." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She continued, eyes kind but firm. "Remember this, people only laugh when they're too afraid to understand you." That sentence stayed with me for years, even later, when I sold the very ideas they once mocked. I could still hear her voice echoing in my head. "Let the painting speak for you." When I was 25, Lucas was honored at the Charleston Business Association Gala. I was invited not as a guest, but as the person to help take photos. Mom said, "Your camera takes lovely pictures. Doesn't it? Consider it your contribution to the family." I stood at the back of the hall, camera in hand, watching my family walk onto the stage. The flashes burst like fireworks. Father shook hands with everyone. Mother straightened Lucas's tie under the lights, smiling radiantly. When the MC called my brother's name, the audience applauded. I clapped too, only to keep rhythm with the crowd. After the ceremony, I gathered my courage and told them I'd just been offered an art scholarship in New York. Mom didn't look up. "Vivian, don't embarrass your brother with your little art stories. People come here to talk business, not paintings." That sentence hit harder than any slap. Not because it was cruel, but because it was familiar, like hearing an old song you once thought was yours, now hopelessly out of tune. I walked out onto the veranda. Rain had just started to fall. The lights reflected on the marble floor, spilling into patterns that looked exactly like the painting I once wanted to create. A woman standing in her own family's celebration. Yet no one remembers her name. I thought, if someone asked, "Where's Richard's daughter?" they'd probably say, "She didn't come." Because honestly, my absence was always more comfortable to them than my presence. Months later, I left Charleston. No one saw me off. No words of good luck. I left in silence, carrying only a sketchbook, and Miss Hart's words like a tiny charm in my pocket. I painted, then studied design, then worked in New York, then failed, then rose again. Every time I thought about calling my mother, I'd ask myself, if she heard my voice, how would she recognize it? Or just ask how Lucas was doing the night after the wedding. I sat in my apartment, removing each hairpin one by one, placing them on the table like pieces of an old life being dismantled. Outside, the city still glowed. Charleston's cobblestone streets shimmered under the streetlights like rippling water. My phone buzzed. A new message appeared. Ivy Langford Artemis Media hit its revenue milestone. The board wants to meet the CEO tomorrow morning. Get ready. Vivian. The real game starts now. I stared at the words on the screen, feeling like the first breeze after a long winter. I was no longer the daughter cropped out of the family photo, and perhaps, for the first time in my life, I understood. Their silence had always been the perfect canvas for the masterpiece I was about to create. The next morning, Charleston was still veiled in mist. Sunlight slid down the glass facade of the Artemis building, glimmering over the Ashley River like a silver ribbon. I stood inside the elevator, coffee in hand, watching the numbers climb toward the 28th floor. The doors opened. Footsteps stopped at once. 12 people in the conference room stood up simultaneously. "I told you she'd show up early," someone whispered. Ivy Langford, co-founder of Luminary Partners Investment Fund, smiled as I entered. Her white suit stood out among a sea of gray tones, the light glinting off her glasses. It was impossible to tell where reflection ended and her gaze began. "Morning, Vivian." "Morning." I set my coffee down and nodded slightly. On the large screen, the words, "Q4 revenue milestone reached," glowed above a sharply rising chart. "We've exceeded our target by 200%. Ivy said, pride edging her voice. "The only question now is what's next." I glanced through the window, where the smaller buildings mirrored the light from where I stood. "We continue. But this time, we tell the story in a way they can't control." Ivy tilted her head. "Still not ready for the public to know you run Artemis." I gave a faint smile. "When they come looking, I'll show them." The room chuckled softly, but not Ivy. Her eyes lingered on me longer than anyone else's, as if she already understood part of the story I kept hidden. She tapped her pen lightly on the table. "You know, some might call your silence arrogance. I call it strategy," I replied. "Silence makes them wonder who truly holds the power." The meeting lasted until nearly noon. When everyone left, Ivy stayed behind, standing by the window overlooking the street below. I heard the Cross family is having issues. I didn't look up from my laptop. What kind of issues, rumors? She said slowly. Lucas Cross is trying to save the family company with a massive loan. Word is, they might be mortgaging your grandparents' estate. I closed the laptop, meeting her eyes. You believe rumors? She shrugged. Rumors are born from fear. I smiled, voice light as mist. Then I'll wait until they call. That's when I'll know whose fear it really is. Ivy laughed softly, shaking her head. I don't know how you do it, but every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm standing next to a flame wrapped in ice. I just learned one thing. I said, you don't need to raise your voice when you know exactly who's listening. The answer made her fall silent for a few seconds. As I walked out, she called after me, Vivian. Have you ever thought that maybe you've already won? I don't need to win, I said without turning back. I just need them to know I never lost. That afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. My penthouse overlooked the river. White curtains swaying gently in the breeze. On the table lay a thick envelope. Neatly placed soft handwriting read, from Dr. Lillian Hart. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph, the student exhibition from years ago. My painting girl at the window hung in the center. Miss Hart stood beside me, one hand resting on my shoulder, her eyes kind yet proud. Below the photo, her note read, you made them look. Vivian, even when they didn't want to. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head toward the ceiling. Outside, the water shimmered under the sunset. Tiny sailboats drifted on the river, white and bright, like brushstrokes sketching the horizon anew. My phone chimed a new email. Investor Forum, Artemis Media. Top 10 founders to watch. The headline made me smile faintly. No one called me the Cross daughter anymore. Now they called me the woman behind the rising media empire. That night, as the city lights came alive, a delivery truck stopped in front of the building. The courier, dressed in a gray uniform, knocked on my door. Delivery for Miss Cross. I stepped out onto the porch. A storm silver Audi RS e-tron GT stood silently under the streetlight, its sleek body reflecting the magnolia trees across the street. When the delivery man opened the door, I touched the car's cool surface, the metal smooth as freshly polished steel. I thought you went for the Porsche. Daniel, my husband, appeared in the kitchen doorway. Smiling, changed my mind. I said, this one suits me better, quiet, but impossible to ignore. He looked at me, pride and worry mingling in his gaze. Where do you plan to drive it? Somewhere they can see it, I said, winking. I took a photo, the sunset reflecting off the silver finish, the classical white columns of Magnolia Estate faintly visible in the distance. I posted it online with the caption, built, not inherited. The photo spread faster than I expected. By evening, the first message arrived from someone I had stopped hoping to hear from. Mom, Evelyn Cross family meeting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I looked at the text, lips curling into a smile, devoid of emotion. They've seen it, I whispered, my reflection glinting back from the glass. And this time, they'll have to come to me. The next morning, the Charleston sky was pale blue, thin, as a silk veil stretched over the water. I started the Audi RS e-tron GT, the electric engine humming softly like a breath. The road to Cross Manor was the same, lined with ancient oaks draped in moss, the scent of damp soil mingling with magnolia blossoms. I had taken this road more times than I could count. Yet today, it was so quiet that every turn of the wheels seemed to carve old memories into the pavement. The iron gates opened slowly, the hinges creaking as if the house itself hesitated to welcome me. Inside, a red carpet stretched down the hallway, the golden light from chandeliers falling like the glow of an old stage waiting for its final act. Evelyn stood in the foyer, wearing ivory, her smile practiced to perfection. "You made it. I was afraid you'd forgotten the way." "I remember," I said with a faint smile. "The hardest roads to forget are usually the ones that lead nowhere." Richard appeared behind her. Posture straight, coffee cup in hand, as if this were just another business meeting. "Sit down. Vivian, there's a lot to discuss." Lucas and his wife. Melissa were already seated at the dining table. On it lay the old silver set my mother reserved for important occasions. How ironic that the day they needed money qualified as one. I sat down slowly, observing. Everything in the room was unchanged. The oil portrait of my great-grandfather. The pendulum clock ticking lazily. The scent of polished wood laced with faint orange spray, Mother's way of masking the smell of mold. Richard spoke first. "Our family's going through a difficult phase. Cross Holdings is temporarily short on liquidity." I looked him straight in the eye. "Temporarily. Or insolvent." Lucas forced a chuckle. "Vivian, you know business. Cash flow fluctuates. It's normal. Normal enough to hold a family meeting midweek." Silence froze the room. Evelyn gave a thin smile, resting her hand on her husband's wrist as a signal. "We're not here to argue. We're family." I leaned back, fingers intertwined. "I'm listening," Melissa chimed in, voice sweet but sharp. "It's just, Lucas needs a short-term loan to keep the company running. Your parents have already used their retirement savings, and you have $16 million in my personal account." Lucas cut in. "The press already knows." "Vivian." I didn't react. I just looked at him the way you look at a chess piece that's just made its first fatal move. As he bent down to pick up a fallen napkin, I caught a glimpse beneath the table, a thick folder stamped at the top, Cross Holdings foreclosure notice. A thin red line marked the paper's edge, like a paper cut. I looked at Lucas, then at my father. He avoided my eyes, fingers tapping his cup, a familiar tell every time he lied. I set my glass down slowly. How poetic. A family that once told me art doesn't pay the bills now wants a loan from the dreamer they dismissed. Evelyn arched a brow. "Are you blaming me? I just want to help the family survive. Blood is still blood." "Vivian." I gave a faint smile. "Yes, but sometimes poisoned blood kills faster than any wound." Lucas slammed his napkin onto the table. "We don't need your philosophy. We need money. If you had any decency, enough." "Lucas," I interrupted, voice even. "Decency doesn't fill debt holes. And my money isn't for saving those who once called me expendable." No one spoke. The pendulum clock ticked on. A bead of sweat slid from Lucas's temple down his collar, landing in the silence between us. Richard cleared his throat, struggling to reclaim authority. "Vivian, this isn't personal. The family needs you. This company is our heritage, and our ancestors," I said, "would understand that some legacies deserve to die if all they nurture is hypocrisy." Evelyn slammed her hand lightly on the table. "Watch your tone. No matter how much money you have, you're still my daughter." I met her gaze. "Thank you for the reminder. But your daughter died the day you left 3 chairs empty at my wedding." The room thickened. The ceiling fan creaked above us like an old rope about to snap. I stood, circling the table, and stopped before the family portrait on the wall, the gala photo from the night Lucas received his award. I was there too, in the corner, blurred like a shadow. "That night, you told me not to embarrass my brother. Today, I think you've embarrassed yourself." Evelyn froze, eyes trembling, lips pressed tight. Lucas started to speak, but I turned away from them. "I didn't come here to save anyone," I said slowly. "I came to see what they've become when they need help from the one they once despised." I pulled my phone from my bag and placed it on the table, face down. "Before I go, I'll leave you something." Richard frowned. I flipped the phone over and pressed a button. The sound was crisp. Recording started. "This recording," I said, "I will remind me who deserves mercy and who never did." The room fell dead silent. Evelyn opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I glanced around the photos. The heirlooms, everything suddenly small and tired. "Next time you need something," I said, my voice barely above a breath, "send it through my assistant. I only meet with partners now, not relatives." I picked up my phone and headed for the door. Behind me, Richard's voice cracked dryly. "Vivian, you can't do this to your own family." I stopped, turned slightly, and gave the thinnest smile. "I'm not doing this to my family, Father. I'm doing it to the people who refused to admit I was part of it." I walked out. The evening breeze brushed my face, carrying the faint scent of magnolia. On my phone screen, a red light blinked, recording 2 minutes 47 seconds. I smiled. They just signed their own record. The afternoon sunlight slid through the glass window, casting long, thin streaks across the wall like blades. I sat at the head of my father's desk, the oak desk he once forbade me to touch. Now it lay between us, like a boundary that could never be crossed. Richard tapped his pen lightly against the surface. "We're going to talk like civilized people. Vivian, this is not your company. I never wanted it to be." I replied evenly. On the desk lay a new stack of documents, thicker than yesterday's, sealed with a red stamp that read, "Confidential." I recognized it instantly, a bank file. I brushed my fingertips over the leather cover, feeling the papers cold. Coarse texture, the kind used only for large loan contracts. "You want me to sign this?" Evelyn interjected softly. "It's just a formality. Dear, to save this family." Save. I flipped through several pages, my eyes gliding over the fine print. Cross-collateral clause, personal recourse liability, and transfer of equity. If your company collapses, the bank will seize my assets. No one spoke. Only the clock ticked steadily in the silence. Lucas cleared his throat. "Those clauses are just for security." The bank insisted. "The bank," I smirked. "Or you," Lucas's face flushed red. Evelyn placed her hand on his wrist, signaling him to stay quiet. "Family must trust each other." "Vivian, unfortunately," I said, "trust isn't a clause in this contract." My father interlaced his fingers, his tone heavier. "Lucas is trying to preserve the Cross name. You bear it too. If the company is liquidated, the whole city will say the Cross family was abandoned by its own daughter." I looked straight at him, my eyes cold. "When you cast me out?" No one asked. "What will Charleston say?" Apparently, honor only matters when it touches your wallet. The air in the room thickened. The family lawyer, Mr. Adler, stood behind Richard, his aged face straining to appear neutral. "Miss Cross," he said, "this could all be handled quickly. We just need your signature here. Once it's done, the press will see a united family." "United," I repeated, a bitter edge in my voice. I remember that word. Those 3 empty chairs at my wedding also represented unity. Didn't they? My phone buzzed on the table. A message appeared. "Southern Herald. An inside source confirms Cross Holdings is under bank foreclosure. Would you like to comment?" Attached was a photo, the exact folder in front of me, the same corner of the cover perfectly matching. I lifted my gaze, scanning each of their faces. "Interesting," I said quietly. "Someone in this family just leaked confidential documents to the press." Lucas stiffened. Melissa lowered her head, her fingers gripping the strap of her leather purse. Evelyn frowned, feigning confusion. Richard cleared his throat. "Are you accusing us?" "No," I replied. "I'm saying that if it's already leaked, then this little performance will end sooner than expected." I locked my phone and continued. Voice steady. You want money. Fine. But I have conditions. Evelyn leaned forward. What conditions? First, I said, Cross Holdings must release a full financial statement and undergo independent auditing. Second, Lucas steps down as director for the entire restructuring period. And third, I paused, meeting my mother's eyes. This family signs a legal agreement never to use my name or image for public relations again. Lucas shot up from his chair. Who do you think you are to set terms for your own parents? I'm the one the bank will call when this company explodes. Evelyn stood as well, her voice trembling but sharp. Vivian, no matter how much money you have, you are still my daughter. She opened a drawer and took out an old photograph of me. At about 6 years old, standing by the garden lake, smiling brightly, holding a magnolia flower. We used to love each other. She whispered, Have you forgotten? I looked at the photo. The light from the window caught its glossy surface, making it shimmer like a late apology. I placed it back on the table, gently pushing it toward her. You loved the version of me that used to exist, not who I am now. And that version has expired. Silence. Only the sound of Richard's fountain pen clicking open click. Vivian, he said, if you refuse, everything will fall into crisis. And don't forget, your own company could be affected. The press doesn't distinguish which cross is which. I know, I said calmly. That's why I want this done in order. No one will ever have the chance to call me ungrateful. I stood, closing the folder. If I don't receive a full financial report by 9 o'clock Monday morning, I'll consider the loan request withdrawn. Lucas started to speak, but Richard raised a hand to stop him. Evelyn exhaled sharply, her lips trembling. I picked up my handbag and walked toward the door. Just as my hand touched the handle, my phone buzzed again. The screen lit up Ivy Langford. The board just approved the Whitmere Foundation Fund. $16 million. Prepare the press release. I stopped and turned slightly. Afternoon light streamed through the window. Half my face was glowing, half in shadow. Looks like I just found a worthier place for my money, I said softly, almost whispering. Richard frowned. What are you talking about? I smiled faintly. I'll help, but not you. I'll help the girls like me, the ones whose families taught them that dreams were a luxury. I opened the door. A draft from the hallway swept in, knocking the old photograph off the table, landing face down on the floor. The grandfather clock struck slowly heavy. Deliberate. I didn't look back. Time's up, I said. This meeting is over. Monday morning. The offices of Artemis Media glowed in sunlight. Rays poured through floor to ceiling windows, spilling across the conference table, reflecting off the placards that read, Whitmere Foundation Empowering Creative Women. The entire floor buzzed with energy assistants moving briskly, lights being tested for interviews. Vivian's hand rested on a steaming cup of coffee. Her eyes fixed on the presentation slides, each word and image chosen with surgical precision. Evie approached, holding a freshly printed press release. All major outlets confirmed attendance: CNN, Herald, Chronicle, even The Atlantic. Vivian nodded. We don't need them to admire me. We just need them to believe why I'm doing this. She adjusted a button on her blazer, her voice calm but resonant. Because every girl who's been told her dreams are a luxury deserves to hear something different. Ivy paused mid-step, glancing at her phone. Email from the Herald. She read aloud. Sources from Cross Holdings claim Vivian Cross created this foundation to polish her public image and avoid family obligations. No one spoke. The faint hum of cameras testing their focus blended with the low clicking of keyboards. Vivian simply smiled. Good. That means they're scared. Then, turning back to the team, let's continue. Every attack article is just another backlink. By noon, Whitmere Hall was packed. Flashes burst across the hall. Banners gleaming behind the stage. The Whitmere Foundation for Creative Women, founded by Vivian Cross. She stepped to the podium, her voice steady and poised as it carried through the microphone. "I was once the girl standing outside my own family's picture," she began. "Everyone praised my brother, called him the future. While I was told to be realistic, I believed them until I realized reality is just the limit someone else sets for you." The room fell into stillness. Vivian looked out at hundreds of faces, reporters, students, benefactors, and felt her heartbeat slow. "My art teacher once told me, one day, they'll have to buy tickets to watch you paint." She smiled softly. "Today, that ticket is faith. Faith that women deserve their place, even when no one gives it to them." Applause thundered through the hall. Spotlights swept gently, catching the light in her eyes. A reporter stood, voice sharp. "Question for Ms. Cross. Did the Cross family contribute to this foundation?" Vivian smiled, her answer measured and clear. "No, but they contributed to me in their own way." Laughter rippled through the room, mingling with the rapid clicks of cameras. She added, her tone cool but gracious, "Sometimes, a lack of support is the only reason we learn how far we can go." At the back row, Ivy leaned toward an assistant, whispering, "This clip will go viral before tonight." Later that afternoon, inside Cross Manor, the TV blared the live broadcast, Vivian's face filling the screen under stage lights. Lucas slammed the remote onto the table. "She's humiliating us." Evelyn gripped the armrest tightly. "She's destroying this family's reputation." Richard sat still, eyes fixed on the television. "No," he said slowly. "She's not destroying us. Evelyn, she's replacing us." Evelyn spun toward him, tears pooling in her eyes. "Richard, what are you saying?" He didn't look away from the screen. "We taught her that silence was humility. Now she's teaching the world that silence is complicity." No one replied. Outside the window, the grandfather clock ticked steadily, counting down the final moments of the Cross Empire. That evening, Artemis headquarters was quiet. The city beyond shimmered with streetlights and the reflection of the river. Vivian sat in her office, holding a printed email. "From Lillian Hart, I'm proud of you. Now I can finally see the complete painting. The dark strokes of your life have found their place against the light." Vivian stood, pulling an old wooden frame from her drawer, a photograph of her and Miss Hart at the student exhibition when she was 18. She pinned the email beside it and hung it on the wall next to the Artemis logo. The desk lamp cast a glow across the glass, reflecting the image of two women, one from the past, one from the present, both looking forward. "I bought the ticket, Miss Hart," Vivian whispered. "But this time, I'm painting the whole new canvas." She returned to her desk and opened her laptop. The folder foundation press kit glowed on the screen, video files uploading from the event. Just then, a notification popped up. Ivy Langford Herald, requesting exclusive interview topic, from the forgotten daughter to the new generation's icon. Vivian was about to type, except when another notification appeared, an email from Evelyn Cross. "We need to talk. You don't know what you're doing. This family is still yours, whether you like it or not." Vivian stared at the words in silence. Outside, night draped itself over Charleston, streetlights spilling faint gold across the rippling river. She leaned back in her chair, lips curving into a calm smile. "This time," she murmured, her voice low, "we'll talk on my stage." In the corner, the security camera blinked red, recording her looking straight into the lens, serene, sharp, and radiant. The studio of Southern Herald TV was cold as metal. White lights blazed down onto the glossy black floor. Assistants in headsets hurried back and forth. One, holding up the countdown board. 3, 2, 1. Vivian sat in the center chair, her midnight blue blazer crisp under the lights, eyes sharp yet calm. She thought this interview would be about the Whitmere Foundation, until the host smiled and announced, "Joining us today is also Mrs. Evelyn Cross, Vivian's mother. The air froze solid. A swift camera pan caught the exact moment the two women locked eyes. Mother and daughter, but they looked like strangers meeting in court. First question. The host began. Rumors say you founded the Whitmere Foundation as revenge against your family. Is that true? Vivian smiled, a blade-thin smile. I built the foundation, she said slowly, to return opportunities to girls who once had to apologize for dreaming. If anyone sees revenge in that, perhaps they're afraid of independence. The host turned to Evelyn. Mrs. Cross. Your thoughts? Evelyn tilted her head, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I just want my daughter to be happy. But she isolates herself from her family. Vivian's gaze didn't waver. I'm not isolated. Mother, I'm free. The camera zoomed in two faces, one straining to appear sympathetic, the other still and unshakable. The studio fell silent. Even the sound of the photographer's flash clicked like a heartbeat under pressure. The middle portion of the interview went smoothly until a phone buzzed backstage. A producer rushed to whisper something to the host. He nodded, then turned back to the camera. We've just received a leaked video circulating online reportedly from a recent Cross family meeting. The giant screen behind them flickered to life, showing Vivian seated across from her parents and Lucas. Evelyn's voice echoed clearly. Blood is blood. Vivian, you owe this family loyalty. Then Richard, sign it. Think of it as duty. The entire studio held its breath. The camera panned back to Vivian's face, still composed, unflinching. Yes, she said. That was the meeting. I recorded it to remind myself that mercy should never be blind. I never released that video, but it seems some members of my family prefer journalism to decency. Evelyn's face went pale. Are you trying to humiliate your own parents? Vivian tilted her head slightly. No. Mother, they just heard the truth. And the truth doesn't need makeup. Outside the studio, the internet exploded. Twitter and YouTube flooded with comments. She said it perfectly. This is intellectual revenge. No shouting needed. The mother acts worse than a politician. Then a single clap from someone backstage. It spread, multiplying, until the entire studio joined in. The host blinked in surprise but quickly regained composure. Ms. Cross, he said. If you could say one thing to your parents right now, what would it be? Vivian pressed her lips together, thoughtful for a few seconds. Thank you, she finally said. The room went still. Thank you, she repeated. Because their absence taught me how to be present in my own life. The camera swept slowly across the audience, some wiping tears. Others rising to applaud. The host bowed his head slightly, a line that will be remembered for a very long time. When the show ended, Vivian stepped out of the studio. The back door opened to the cool Charleston night. Flashbulbs burst across the steps, lighting her path in flickers of white. Evie approached, her face tense. Breaking update. You should hear this. She handed over her phone, its screen glowing with the headline, Breaking News: Cross Holdings officially files for bankruptcy. Dominion Bank has moved to repossess all assets. The Cross family loses control of the corporation after 52 years. Vivian said nothing. Camera shutters clicked behind her like distant thunder. From across the crowd, Evelyn emerged, supported by an assistant, her face pale and hollow. The two women met eyes across the chaos of reporters. Vivian spoke softly, only loud enough for Ivy to hear. At last, they've become what they always thought. I was penniless. She turned and walked toward her Audi RS e-tron GT. The electric blue glow tracing across the pavement. On the radio, the broadcast replayed her words from the interview. Thank you for their absence. She closed her eyes, listening to her own voice drift through the air, soft, but echoing farther than any apology ever could. A week after the interview, Charleston seemed reborn. The old signs bearing the name Cross Holdings were being removed from the central building, replaced with new lettering Artemis Media, East Branch. On the morning news, The anchor read slowly. Cross Holdings, a 52-year-old financial conglomerate, has officially gone bankrupt. All assets have been repossessed by Dominion Bank. Vivian turned off the TV. In her penthouse, the morning light poured through the large glass windows, spilling across a desk cluttered with documents, thank you cards, and hundreds of emails celebrating the Whitmere Foundation, surpassing 10 million donations in its first week. On one envelope, a handwritten note from Ivy read, "The whole country is talking about you in a good way." Vivian smiled faintly and took a deep breath. The scent of freshly brewed coffee blended with a hint of pale wood. Outside, church bells rang soft and distant. On her way to an interview with Business Weekly, her Audi RS e-tron GT glided through the downtown streets. At a street corner, she saw a familiar figure, Lucas. He was handing out job flyers in front of a phone store. His shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled, and dark circles under his eyes. No one recognized the man who had once been heir to the Cross Empire. The car slowed down. For a brief moment, their eyes almost met through the window. Vivian considered lowering the glass, but Lucas looked down, avoiding her gaze, slipping another flyer into a passerby's hand. She remained silent and drove on. On the radio, the announcer's voice drifted softly. Sometimes, loss isn't punishment, it's the chance to begin again. The Business Weekly headquarters stood by the river, its glass walls reflecting the pale gray sky. In the conference room, the interviewer asked, "Ms. Cross, after everything that's happened, how do you feel now that the tables have turned?" Vivian rested her hand on the table, her voice calm and steady. "Nothing has really turned," she said. "They collapsed because they forgot that success isn't something inherited through blood." She paused, then added, "As for me, I simply stopped asking permission to exist." Beyond the glass wall, the Charleston River drifted quietly. A small boat passed by, leaving behind a thin silver trail of ripples. The interviewer lifted his head. "And do you have any regrets?" Vivian smiled. "No. I've learned that silence can often echo louder than justification." At noon, when she returned to the office, Ivy placed a cream-colored envelope on her desk. "A letter from someone special," she said softly. Vivian opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a short message. "You've won, but I hope next time you'll choose happiness." Signed Richard Cross. Vivian stared at it for a long time, then folded the letter and placed it into a drawer not to forget. But to close the chapter, she understood some apologies. Don't need a reply, because the past has already done the work for them. She stepped out onto the balcony. The breeze carried the mingled scent of river water and magnolia blossoms, a fragrance that once made her throat tighten, now only brushed softly by. Below, a group of interns was posting banners for an event titled "Women Lead the Next Chapter." That afternoon, Vivian attended a small seminar at a local university. She spoke about entrepreneurship, rejection, and how to turn pain into creative energy. A student asked, "Do you ever fear becoming like them, arrogant?" Cold, Vivian replied, her tone warm. "Yes, I do. But I've realized power doesn't make us arrogant. It only amplifies what's already within us. If your heart is clear, your light will reach farther than your fear." The room erupted in applause. Golden light washed over her face, peaceful now, no longer sharp. As she left, a young woman ran after her, clutching a portfolio. "Miss Vivian, I'm a design student. I'd like to intern at Whitmere." Vivian accepted the folder with a smile. "Why did you choose our foundation?" the girl answered without hesitation. "Because you made me believe that women can lead without apologizing for it." Vivian was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then welcome to Whitmere." They walked side by side toward the exit. The afternoon sunlight stretched long across the tiled floor. Night. Vivian's office was lit only by the desk lamp. On the wall hung an old photograph of her and Miss Hart, now beside a collection of over 100 thank you letters from Whitmere Scholarship recipients. Each line gleamed like a small streak of light, connecting the once-forgotten lives together. Her laptop glowed. A new email from Ivy appeared. Subject proposal. Whitmere Europe expansion. Message investors from London want to meet next week. They're offering a partnership to open a European branch. Vivian looked out the window. Charleston slept below its lights, scattered like tiny memories glimmering on the water. She whispered, almost to herself, maybe this is just the first chapter. The night breeze swept through, gently rattling the picture frame. For a moment, the reflection of Vivian and Miss Hart overlapped 2 generations. One dream. 3 months after the interview. Charleston was in autumn, the sky so clear it looked polished by light. On her laptop screen, an email from the Women in Media Alliance gleamed. Congratulations. Vivian Cross Woman of the Year, 2026. Your voice has redefined leadership for a generation. Vivian closed her laptop and exhaled slowly. She didn't smile broadly, only gently. This achievement came late, but at the right time when she no longer needed it to prove anything. On the table, her suitcase was already packed a plane ticket to London, the contract for opening, Whither Europe, and a handkerchief embroidered with the name Hart. She stood, looking out at the balcony. Charleston stretched beneath the sunlight, peaceful, as if those years of pain had never happened. Charleston International Airport. VIP Lounge. Vivian had just sat down when the receptionist's soft voice called, "There's someone here to see you." She turned. At the doorway, Vivian Cross. The older woman stood small in a beige coat, hair grayer than before, holding a yellowed envelope in both hands. Vivian froze for a few seconds. Mother Evelyn nodded. "I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to return this to you." They sat facing each other, between the scent of bitter coffee and the echo of flight announcements. Evelyn placed the envelope on the table. "I found this in an old drawer. Your wedding photo. I once threw it away, but now, perhaps I should give it back." Vivian opened the envelope. Inside was the photograph her in a white dress, standing alone beneath the floral arch. 3 empty chairs in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes remained calm. "I didn't know you kept it." "I didn't," Evelyn said quietly. "It found its way back to me." Silence fell a moment, so long it felt as if time itself was hesitating. Vivian set the photo down. "You don't need to apologize." "Mother, I'm not angry anymore." Evelyn looked up, her eyes fragile. "Truly, truly," Vivian said with a faint smile. "But I'm not coming back. Either." Evelyn swallowed hard. "I know. Some houses can't be rebuilt with old bricks. I just wanted to see you at peace, before I lose the chance." Vivian looked at her, no anger. "No, fear. Only a distant kind of tenderness. I am at peace," she said, "because of the very things that once broke me." The loudspeaker chimed Flight 317 to London is now boarding. They both stood. Outside, the midday sunlight slanted through the tall glass window, casting reflections of 2 women, one old, one young, both framed in the same light. Vivian suddenly remembered Miss Hart's words, "Forgiveness doesn't save others." Vivian, it saves you. Now she understood. Before she left, Evelyn took her daughter's hand, her voice trembling. "If anyone asks who you are, tell them you're the woman I was meant to become." The words fell softly into the air, but shattered the last layer of ice between them. Vivian squeezed her mother's hand gently, saying nothing, letting her eyes speak. "Instead, I forgive you." Evelyn turned away, her figure shrinking into the crowd. Vivian stood still, watching until her mother disappeared from sight. On the plane, Vivian sat by the window. Charleston faded beneath her rooftops, shrinking into tiny fragments of memory. She unlocked her phone. A new notification from Ivy appeared. Whitmere Europe. Approved. London awaits. Investors ready for launch. Vivian set the phone down and looked out the window. The sky is vast and endless. She pulled out Miss Hart's old letter from her jacket pocket and reread the final line one day. You will make the world pay to witness how you stand tall. Vivian smiled softly. You were right, she whispered. But I'm not standing alone anymore. I'm leading the way. The plane accelerated, lifted from the runway, and soared into the open sky. Below, Charleston glimmered a trail of light between clouds. Vivian closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the engine blend with her heartbeat. No more hatred. No more past. Only wind, light, and a feeling she had never dared to dream of freedom. As the plane pierced through the clouds, a new message appeared on her screen. Unknown number. We've been following your work in the U.S. Let's talk in London. Vivian looked at the screen, her eyes reflecting the blue of the sky. New chapter, she whispered. And this time, I'm writing it in light.